Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Today, we're talking about health and wealth and how they relate to one another and impact each other, and how organizations can support employees and their families with regard to both. So really glad today to be joined by Julie Galloway, VP of Global Benefits at AT&T, and Colin Brennan, Chief Customer Officer at Alight Solutions today to talk about this topic. I'm Catherine Carrere. I'll be your host. And before we dive into the questions, Julie and Colin, could you share a little bit about your role? And Julie, let's start with you, please.
Great, thanks, and happy to be here. So, yes, I lead the global benefits for AT&T. We have not quite almost 1 million lives that we touch on a regular basis, and part of what we do and oversee includes retirement plans, it includes health and medical plans, we have well-being, governance, so it's pretty broad-based, and I love to think about it as very impactful for our participants and our company.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Colin Brennan. Thrilled to be here with you as well. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Alight Solutions. Similar to Julie, we look after about 30 million people across the U.S. and their dependents, and so help a number of large organizations look at this stuff every day, and it's a topic that I'm passionate about because it definitely helps people perform better in the things they do every day.
Wonderful. Thank you both. So Colin, I'll start with you with the first question. Let's just level set everyone around, why is this important? Why should organizations care about creating a holistic health and wealth benefit strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, if I think back and you go back over the past, 50 or 60 years ago, life was easy, right? Companies provided all things health and benefits when you were at work, and then for many of them, even post-work, right? With pension plans and retiree health and those things. And the economic realities of the time we live in, lots of those things aren't there. So most organizations, most people, my kids who are just getting the workforce will probably never experience a pension. Maybe a few spots, but probably not likely. So more of that responsibility for retirement is definitely on employees today. And in the health space, the same way. We've seen a shifting of more and more responsibility to employees to make decisions and pick the things that are right for them. And at the same time, we've seen employers do lots of amazing things to offer more and more and new innovative programs, challenges that can be really confusing for employees. And so, what I would say with all that is the landscape has become more complex. We're asking employees to take more responsibility for their future. And we're also seeing, health and wealth are more entwined than I've ever seen them be, right? So, if you get sick and you have an event, you may take funding out of your 401k. And so you may not be able to save for retirement, or you may show up very stressed financially. And so the way that you then show up for your customers at your organization, at an AT&T store or someplace else, isn't always the best. And so companies need to take care of their employees because it's a tough world that we live in. And those employees for most organizations are the embodiment of what they do, right? They show up to your customers every day. They build the products you sell. They do those pieces. And so that's really important. And then obviously in the age that we're in right now, being able to attract and retain great talent is also critically important. And so these are factors that people look at and how they think their organization is going to treat them and how they help them. And so the two have come together. It's gotten more complex, and I think companies are trying to do a lot of things that are really amazing. It's a question of how you help people make the right choices at the right time.
Love that. Such a good point about how, both health and wealth, bringing them together, creating that overall well-being experience can improve the experience overall. And Julie, what's your take on this convergence of health and wealth? I know you've had a lot of experience with it. So.
Yeah. So absolutely converging. And I'm going to share just a little backgrounder story here at AT&T. We used to keep our organizations or our teams very siloed. So we had a retirement focus, and we had a health focus, and we had a wellness focus. But what we found is everything that Colin was just saying, they really are coming together. And so last fall, we decided to move from wellness to well-being and really try and look at the whole person. And so we brought our financial wellness and our emotional wellness and our physical wellness all together into one team, and really trying to look at how can we make sure things aren't falling through the cracks. And I'll say it again, looking at that whole person.
Such a great point. And as you think about the well-being of your employees, right, and making sure that they can bring their best selves to work each day, that involves investing in them. And so, Colin, why should companies think about investing in their employees? And is that more important than investing in the bottom line?
I think the two are probably linked together, Catherine. So, I don't know that one excludes the other. And I think, as Julie talked about, innovative companies like AT&T are kind of bringing the pieces together and making the investments. So what I would say first is, most organizations we work with, they are investing, right? Companies are spending billions with a B of dollars on healthcare and healthcare spend and those things. And I think, to Julie's point, the idea is you want to try to get the most out of it and help that family, know what decision to make and know where to go and know how to do it. So I don't think it's about spending more money. It's about getting the value out of what you've got. I think for most organizations, people are one of two or three of the most important assets they have, and probably one of the higher spend categories. And so what we've seen is it's not about making different choices. It's more about how do you say, hey, if I'm going to put 20 programs in place, and there are programs that I have for fertility or for diabetes support or disease management or what have you, or stress release, right? I've got a call app that I want to give to my employees when they need it. How do you help people know about that stuff? And how do you get it to them at the right point in time? And so it's really about helping people make the right decisions in the moment and helping people think about where they want to go with it. So it's not spending more, it's spending it the right way. And it's making sure that there's utilization and driving that in the right places. And the reason to do that, is that people are one of our most important assets. And so again, the way they help your customers, the way they show up in your organization, the way they build new products and think about it, as Julie called out, if you're going to be productive at work, it comes from being in a calm state and a mentally healthy state and those things. And all these issues that we talked about kind of come together. And so for employers, for people to be able to show up at their best, to attract the right talent, to bring in the right people, it's making sure that you've got the right programs and then also that you use them. And I think that's one of the things we've seen is, one of the challenges organizations have had is they've thrown more and more programs at things, and that's interesting. It's a lot more spend, but the question is, do people see value in it? And so I think employers need to do more to bring those together, bring them to light, drive them to people at the right times. And that's an important asset, more so than spending more.
Love that. So, investing in your employees is investing in your company. And Julie, would love to hear more from you about what specifically you're doing at AT&T. I know you're doing a lot of creative and innovative things. So,
yeah. Sure. So it's interesting, and I laugh at the way Colin characterized it, and a little bit we've characterized it as lighting up the Christmas tree. How do we get programs out there? And I think we have the best in class programs, but they're a little bit disparate. And so I'll step back even and say AT&T as a business is on this march to really streamline and simplify. I think you see us in the news all the time, and we're getting down to our core and really trying to focus on what we need to focus on as a business. And so it's no different with our benefits. It's really trying to streamline and simplify what we have and what we provide to our participants so that they have a better feel on what's available to them. They're not experts. They're not thinking about their health care or even their financial health on a daily basis. They're doing that when there's a need, and in the need, how do you access this information? So one of the things we've done in partnership with Alight is build out kind of a single resource where our employees can go that summarizes all the benefits that are available to them. And so it's a personalized benefits summary page. And we launched it at the first of this year. And I'm going to tell you, we've had some really good success. I was honestly a little bit surprised by just how many hits we were getting and people out there looking at the benefits that they have. And it's in a location where our employees are already needing to access that location. They're familiar with that location. And so we're really excited. And it's kind of this win-win. We're streamlining, we're making it easier to do business with, and helping our participants know where to go to find out what's available to them.
Wonderful. And a lot of that, like you mentioned, by bringing those programs together in the moment, it really helps employees engage more. So what else are you doing? What's working well? And where are there continued opportunities as you take this approach to the overall Wellbeing Center?
Yeah. Well, I think so. I don't want to start on the negative, but here's what's hard. I'm going to start with what's hard. How about that? What's hard is communications. and getting the engagement of our employees, because we have this multitude of vendors, and trying to figure out how we can get our employees to engage in these things that will really help them is hard. And so what we're doing is trying to figure out, okay, can we personalize communications in a better way? How do we move to something that we would call human speak, right? So I have 30 different vendors. Well, the average technician out there, or even the average, the call center rep, or even someone in management, they're not necessarily going to recognize specific vendor names and think, oh, yes, of course, this vendor provides that. So we're trying to change things up and speak in a language that's recognized by our participants. So, oh, you have some back pain? Let us help you with that. Here's where you can go for back pain. Or, oh, you have a question on student loan management. You know what? We can help you with that. We have a resource for you. And so we're on this path. I'm excited about it. Again, communication is hard. So even getting to the point of human speak is going to be a process, but we're starting, and so far positive trends. So we're excited about it.
Wonderful. Certainly have to start somewhere. And Colin, I know you're speaking with a lot of companies each day, and they're providing programs like Julie just mentioned, right, around healthcare and wealth and mental health and back pain. And so what are you seeing, and how do we solve for all these different programs that employers are providing?
Yeah, I think Julie said it well. The lighting up the Christmas tree, or the adding programs, has been kind of the key for the last few years. And a lot of that was due to, as companies saw cost issues or pressure or things that weren't performing well, is, hey, let's throw this program added to that one. And the reality is, in the space that we all live in, there are probably 500 different, health point solutions out there. And there's probably 10 new ones every day, right, that I don't even know. And so to Julie's point, I think getting to the right ones is important. I like the human speak aspect. I think that makes a lot of sense. I would say what we started to see is, we as people have come to expect a certain level of simplicity, right? And so, whether it's I log onto the TV at night and it makes recommendations of what I should watch, right? Or I go out to Amazon and it's telling me what I should shop for, pick up here and carry on. And so, the expectation that people have is things are going to be simple and easy and personalized and intuitive. And so a lot of what we're seeing, a lot of what we're starting to get to, and Julie talked about some of the things we're doing with them, is getting to that one platform. Like, how do you make it easy? I loved what she said about, how do you put it into a space people are used to? So, can I get access to ask questions in my Teams or Slack or a channel that I use today? One of the things we're focused on is that platform and bringing it together. And I think as we talk to many organizations, the other challenge you have with all these programs is they're all in different places. They all have different sign-ons. They all have different user IDs. They all have different passwords. And so, that makes it hard for people. And especially if you only use it once a year, right? The odds of me remembering my password, about zero. So, one of the things we're trying to do is bring it together in a platform, get it to single sign-on, make it really easy. And once you get that, it's like, as Julie was saying, like, how do I get to where the person is? If I'm a technician out in the field, or I'm a construction worker, things like that, like, I'm not at a PC every day. The reality is my life probably revolves around my mobile device, if anything. And so, meeting people where they are on that device, that factor they care about, to the earlier point about, a family that has an emergency in the middle of the night, like, I can't pick up the phone and call somebody. So, can I text or talk to a virtual assistant and get an answer to say, hey, before you go to that ER, which is going to cost you a lot of money on the back end, think about the acute care center down the road that, is a fraction of the cost and is in network. And so, we're trying to do things with bringing the platform together, making it easy, doing single sign-on, using mobile to get where people want to be. And then what I alluded to in the beginning, really making it personalized. So how do we make recommendations? And so, Julie talked about they've got high deductible plans. Well, one easy one is if you've got a high deductible plan, you need to be saving some money. So when you do have that deductible to hit, you're there. And so pretty easy for us to find people that have an HSA and say, hey, if you've got an HSA and you're in a high deductible plan and you're not putting any money there, probably a really good thing to think about. Now, if I'm like most people and you send me that notice and it's like, okay, that's great, but I got to pay my rent and I got to pay off my other bills, that's not helpful. But, if we can personalize and say, hey, Catherine, I see you just got a pay increase, maybe you should think about putting some of that into your HSA, getting them at the right time in the right moment on a factor they care about, maybe sending you a text, so you actually see it and respond to it. That's what it's all about these days. And so, The world we live in is surrounded by, outstanding technology that helps us do a lot of things. Our space, we haven't evolved quite as quickly. And so what we're trying to do is bring that platform, bring that personalization, bring mobile to the forefront, make it about the user. I love what Julie said about human speak, because I think even with us, we just know a lot. And the reality is these plans are complex and the language is complex and the rules and laws are complex. And so how do you make it really easy to say, what are you trying to do? Great, let me help you with that. Let me get you to the right place. And then using some of the artificial intelligence behind it to say, hey, by the way, here's some other things. And I think that's the one that I'm most excited about is when I look out the next couple of years, we ought to be able to do things that are more predictable, where I think a lot of things we've done have been reactive. Hey, we saw you did this. You should now think about this. Well, if we can start to predict what somebody should do, or say, hey, Julie, based on people like you, here's 3 recommendations we have for you. That's what people want. That's about making it simple. And so that's really what we've been focused on. And what I see a lot of really cutting edge companies thinking about is that how do I consolidate it down? How do I make it really easy, mobile enable it, single sign on, virtual support, all those characteristics to make it really easy for people.
Yeah. And so, Colin, can I jump in on that just quickly? Because you said something that I thought was interesting, and this whole concept of single sign on. We're a mobile company, so I love the idea of mobile enabled. We're trying to do that across the board, across the platforms for our employees. Very important that our participants can access information and care wherever it is that they're doing business. But we just recently embarked on doing an inventory of all the different sign-ons, all the different websites, all the different locations where we have benefits, and it was overwhelming. I'm going to tell you, it ended up being a 2.5-page document just trying to identify each place. And so years ago, when I first was out of college, I worked in a call center, and I can remember hanging on the wall this sign that was, "Are we easy to do business with?" And I'll tell you, it's something that has stuck with me all these years. I hate to say decades, maybe even, but just, are we easy to do business with? And I think the easier you are to do business with, the more engagement you're likely to see. So very important point. Glad you brought it up.
Yep.
Definitely. And you mentioned the fact that in our everyday lives, right, we have come to know and expect a personalized experience. So then how do we relate that to benefits? And in some of our data, we've seen that, more than 70% of employees are willing to share their personal information if you use it to tailor to my needs and you use it to help me. And so as we think about helping people and caring for them, Julie, to kick it back to you a second, can you tell us a little bit about why caring for your employees helps build that trust and then ultimately a performance culture of productivity within your population?
Yeah. So, we're not immune to this whole great resignation that we're going through. And so that trust is so important. That personalization is so important. And so, look, it's not realistic to be able to say that I can custom design a program for every demographic that we have. But I think looking for those ways to give choice. And when I say choice, I want to take it even a step further, which is meaningful choice, right? So that we can at least come up with some buckets of approaches for our demographic. And so if we, I mentioned the high deductible healthcare plan. I think, Colin, your point on saving in the HSA is just dead on. But honestly, if I'm a new hire right out of college, I may have student loan debt that's more important to me to get that paid off than to think about, this HSA that, I'm, of course, at my stage, I'm sitting here thinking, oh, it's triple tax advantage. This is great. I'm going to be able to save. Okay, a 25-year-old with $50,000 of student loan debt, that it's just not the same importance to them. And so we have to look and say, how can we provide programs so that our employees can bring their best selves to work without having to worry as much about some of these different components. So we launched this concept of a choice account, where the employee through annual enrollment gets to say, okay, I want to direct this to an HSA or to student loan repayment, or maybe I'm in mid-career and I have a young family and I'm saving for college. So we have some more limited choices now. What we're looking at to evaluate is, okay, well, how do we expand that? And with the well-being in mind, things like we regularly hear our employees want help with gym memberships, or they want help looking, for a nutritionist, or something that's not just already a key component of the coverages that we offer, but are still important to overall well-being. Let's give our employees some options within the certain confines of managing a program that touches 1 million lives.
And Julie, I think that, just add on there, I think what you hit on that's key that I'm seeing more and more is that idea of choice, right? How do you meet people where they are and give them a bit of choice and flexibility? And so I think two things you said in there that really resonate with me is that idea of choice and flexibility. And we're seeing a lot more of that, of people saying, hey, I want to give employees a little bit more optionality in what they can choose within some boundaries. But the part that goes with it that I liked was the responsibility of education. Because I think about my 2 kids coming out of college, like they don't know what they need to save for, and they've always kind of had us to do it for them. And so I think putting some of those things in front of them to be proactive is really important. And, one that really hit me over the break, one of our employees, one of the husbands actually had a really serious health condition with cancer. And so I remember talking to him after, he's been through a couple months now. And it was, one of the things that struck me is he said, look, my company took really good care of me. Like they helped me find things and navigate and get time off and find the right benefits and do all the right stuff. He's like, I will never leave them. And in this day and age, that's the kind of thing where, we talk a lot about the moments that matter. And so the unfortunate thing is a lot of times, especially in the health space, when we interact with people, it's in their worst moments, right? Where something is going wrong, they've got a problem. So I think for organizations, and back to your question, Catherine, about why invest, like that is the thesis, right? Is if you can help people in those moments, it builds loyalty, to your business, to your brand, to things like that. That just is, it's hard to measure in almost any other way. So I think it's really important.
Definitely. And I think we would know that, there's 5 generations in the workforce right now, right? So speaking to someone just out of college, like both of you said, versus someone who's about to retire, very different needs, but how do we support them? And I think the organizations that tuned into our session today are probably on some path towards solving for well-being. But Julie, there's obviously a lot that this involves. And so if I'm tuning in today for the first time and I'm feeling like overwhelmed, and where do I even begin, right? I mean, what is your recommendation? Like, how do you get started? And how do you convince maybe the rest of your leadership team to get on board?
Yeah, no, so it's a great question. We are still very much in the early stages. I think step 1 was this concept of moving from wellness to well-being. So looking at the more holistic picture. But then what was really important, I think, is we got leadership buy-in. So we recently created what we're calling our Wellbeing Advisory Council. It's made up of C-suite leaders from across the business who are in different segments and have different needs for the populations they serve. And it's really a diversity of thought and perspective in terms of how we approach well-being. And it's interesting, we've had 2 meetings now. One, in the first meeting, the question came up, well, what's the problem you're trying to solve? Do you have data? Is there a problem? And it was a good question. And there's part of it is, well, there's a little bit of intuition here that we need to make this change. But then we went back and conducted several focus groups across the business and tried to really hone in on what's the problem we're trying to solve. And it's a process. We'll have that readout at the next Wellbeing Advisory Council. But I think that's key to getting that very senior leadership buy-in and support for the programs and the processes that we're following. But I also don't want to lose sight of this can't be something that just is another initiative pushed out by HR. It can't be something that is just another initiative coming from the C-suite. there's a grassroots effort that's required too. And so we've started engaging with existing organizations in the business where people go for information that they trust. So our employee resource groups, okay? There are deep connections between our employee resource groups and the employees who are part of those groups. And so it almost becomes this multifaceted approach to getting involvement in these programs. So important to have the C-suite and that support, important to have the grassroots, and just try and hit it from multiple angles.
Yeah, Julie, I think it's awesome that you guys have involved some of your employee groups and those things to get that. Because I'm with you that at the end of the day, to make it sustainable and long term, not a passing fancy or initiative, that's what it takes. And then I think, working with you guys for a long time too, I think you've also made some org changes inside your org and the benefits group too, to bring things together in some ways. Is that right?
Yeah, yes, that's right. So peeling out from our retirement group, the focus on financial wellness, peeling out from our health and welfare team, so that we're bringing this cross-functional group together to really focus on that whole well-being. And it comes back again to that diversity of perspective and just those aha moments as each of the different teams are talking and like, oh, I didn't even think about the impact this could have on this other kind of pillar of well-being. So yeah, it's a process. So we have along the lines taken these, maybe more fundamental baby steps, but already we're seeing good payoff.
Wonderful. Well, I think we have time for a couple more questions. I see a few coming in here. So Colin, earlier you were talking a little bit about the one platform, right? And kind of the different personalization capabilities. Can you talk a little bit more about that one platform approach and how that works?
Yeah, so certainly within our space, we've built out a platform called Alight Work Life, that really tries to bring things together. And for us, it's really about what Julie said earlier, like how do you get people to engage and how do you put it into a place that they go to? And so, one of the things we found is that lots of employees like to go out and look at their paychecks. Lots of them need to go out and enter time off and things like that. And so, in the Work Life platform, we've tried to bring together a lot of those things people do quite a bit with the benefits, with the healthcare pieces. We've wrapped it together with single sign-on, like Julie said, because we have the same exercise. If you go out and look at most of the companies we work with, there's probably 20 different places to go or 10 different places to go. And so it can be confusing. And so, we try to use that platform to bring those things together so that at the end of the day, you're going to go to some underlying systems, but they're all woven together. They've got clear themes to them. We built journeys that kind of help you think about how do you interact with those benefits in a different way that you maybe it's putting 2 or 3 of them together, right? Maybe one isn't the perfect answer, but the combination of some financial support for the period I'm in, along with finding the best doctor, along with some, the call map, right? To give me some mental stability if I'm dealing with an issue with my child and things like that. So, trying to bring those pieces together in the platform and then really using, like I said earlier, some of the AI and personalization to try to be thoughtful about, how do we get people the most important message for them? And so it's not bombarding you with 50 things, but it's like, hey, for you, Catherine, we think this is the most important thing right now. And so to Julie's point, that could be financial savings. It could be paying down college debt. It could be picking the right doctor. It could be doing your annual physical. It could be, think about a different prescription type. So but trying to bring that all together and be proactive so people don't have to think about it on their own. And we make it simple at the end of the day. And I love what Julie said about just keep it simple. If it's simple to interact with, people will use it and keep coming back, which is the important thing.
Good deal. Well, I think we're at time. So just want to thank both of you again today. It's been a wonderful discussion and learned a lot about health and finances, right? Just in time for tax day next week. So thank you again. And we will talk soon, everyone.